Welcome to the SIXSENSE Foundation.
I'm Jaxon. I'm Jaxon, spell me. Today is Wednesday, March the 1st, 2017, and we're here with Dr. Alison. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Alison Jefferson, and I'm a historian, and I study, at this time, African American leisure sites during the Jim Crow era here in Southern California.
Alright, so of course we read some of the articles about your field of study, but I don't think a lot of our audience is going to know a lot about the history of African American leisure sites during Jim Crow, and especially not about the history specifically in Manhattan Beach. So could you talk a little bit about the Bruce family and the development of that leisure site?
So African Americans developed leisure sites in Southern California and in other parts of the United States. Because during the Jim Crow era, the period of really mean discrimination and segregation, they were not allowed, in some cases by law, particularly in the southern states and here in California and in the Los Angeles area, by practice, to go to resorts that white people opened. And so they could enjoy themselves and their money and the taxes that they pay to the government. They opened up their own resorts, and one of those that was opened was Bruce's Beach, which is in Manhattan Beach, and they opened that in 1912. The Bruce family. It was really Willa Bruce who was the lead of the couple. Her husband Charles worked on the railroad, and so Willa, Mrs. Bruce, was the one that was primarily responsible for the resort, and her name was the one that was on the deeds to the parcels of property that they owned down there. It was a really successful resort for a number of years. It was never fully embraced by the Manhattan Beach white community. Even from the start of the resort's beginning in 1912, they were protesting, the white people were protesting that the African American people started this beach resort, and they did things at that point in time to inhibit them from using the beach, like putting up ropes to say you can't walk on this part of the beach, and making them walk around to get to the water. And Mrs. Bruce was just kind of emphatic in terms of her determination to keep that business going for quite a while. Some people have an uncomfortable relationship with the history of the site. And that's because during the 1920s, the white Manhattan Beach citizens, through the political or the governmental policy process, forced the Bruces to stop having their resort there in Manhattan Beach through eminent domain. And so what they did was they said, they got the government to say, we're going to take this property away from these people because we're going to do a public benefit here. We're going to put in a park. And the Bruces fought the action because where they were was, in terms of the community, was one of the remote sections of the beach in terms of Manhattan Beach proper. They were at the far north border of the city. And they fought it, and they took not only the Bruces' land, but they also took the land of the small community that had developed right around the Bruces, where several other African American families and some white people had bought property, but it was mostly the African Americans who had built something on their property. So from that point, the fight was on in terms of what the memory would be for that site today, as well as how the history was going to be reported. Many people tried to brush the history under the rug. They wanted it to just be ignored and erased from Manhattan Beach's history. It was a very racist act, white supremacist act. We were able to get the folks out of there through the eminent domain proceedings, but they couldn't chase them totally off the beach because the beach was considered a public resource. There were civil rights laws on the California books from the 1890s which said that African Americans and anybody else could use places like a public beach. And so, although they were able to chase African Americans out of there through from the resort in 25, they didn't settle the case until 1929. And between 1925 and 1929, African Americans challenged an effort by some of the white citizens in Manhattan Beach to keep them off the beach by having a wade-in and swim-in. And these African Americans were people from Los Angeles, and they were active with the National Association of Colored People, the NAACP. And the leader of that group at that time was H. Claude Hudson. And he and a couple of dozen African Americans came down to Manhattan Beach, and they proceeded to stick their feet in the water. And they were dressed, okay? They weren't like swimming. They were still in their clothes for the day, but they were coming down here and they had their, pants and things rolled up, and there was even there were even a couple of women that participated in this activity, these subterfuge measures, and they were able to win a court case at that point in time in 27 that clarified that everybody could use the public beach. And this is a part of the history in terms of what is remembered today by the Manhattan Beach community that gets lost. People remember the story of the Bruces and the people that were displaced from using the beach there through eminent domain, but they forget about this major civil rights occurrence that happened in 1927. Now, although the African Americans were able to get clarity on use of the beach, it wasn't such a friendly place to go, so they didn't really continue to go to that beach. They started going to the beach more frequently that was in Santa Monica because that was a friendlier environment. And as it relates to the story today, many people are, of Bruce's Beach and the community, many people there today are supportive of the fact that they want everyone to know what renamed the park, which was Parque Huracan in more recent times, to Bruce's Beach in 2007.
What is your Black excellence, or what is Black excellence to you?
I think Black excellence is being a civically engaged citizen and an educated citizen, and also to pursuing whatever it is you're going to pursue in life. You do the best job that you can do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jefferson.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Let us be thankful we have an occupation to fill. Work hard. Increase production.